Welcome back, everybody. It's Tuesday, February 17th, 2026. Born on this date in 1979, former Major League outfielder Josh Willingham of Florence. It's Fat Tuesday, the last day of the Mardi Gras season. Last chance this year to laissez les bon temps roulé. Get you some king cake. I'm sure I'll probably mention some of the signs from the Comic Cowboys parade on tomorrow's report. On today's podcast episode, Robert Duvall, who passed away on Sunday, was probably my very favorite actor. Now, I've had thoughts on his work for a long time, and I've always considered him to be an honorary Southerner. Now, I think his work has shown respect for imperfect Southern characters, and I have a kind of crazy theory that one role in particular has had some impact on our cultural identity. We also have news that's really just breaking as I'm recording this, the passing of civil rights icon Jesse Jackson. We're going to talk about that, how our delegation voted on the SAVE Act, and a change at the PSC, but not that change. I'm Mike Morgan, and we're down in Alabama.
America leads the world in medicine development. It matters. We get new medicines first, nearly 3 years faster. 5 million Americans go to work because we make medicines here at home. And not relying on other countries keeps us safe. But China is racing to overtake us. Will we let them, or will we choose to stay ahead? When America leads, America cures. Let's tell Washington to keep us in the lead.
Learn how at americacures.com. Paid for by pharma.
Civil rights activist and former presidential candidate Jesse Jackson has passed away, reports the Associated Press. Jackson, who's been in poor health for some time now, was born in South Carolina and began his involvement with the civil rights movement as a student at North Carolina A&T. In 1965, he took part in the Selma to Montgomery Voting Rights March. He worked with Martin Luther King Jr. and the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and was with King at his 1968 assassination at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis. Twice during the 80s, Jackson ran for the Democratic nomination for president. His 1984 campaign featured his infamous Hymietown comments regarding New York City's Jewish population that got him in trouble. He quickly apologized for that. In 1988, he won 13 primaries and caucuses, making him the most successful black candidate for president until Barack Obama in 2008. Jesse Jackson was 84 years old. And today you'll be able to find more on that at al.com. When the U.S. House of Representatives passed the Save America Act last week to add requirements for voters, Alabama's delegation voted strictly along party lines, reports al.com's Ruth Servant-Smith. The SAVE Act requires documentary proof of citizenship in order to register to vote. Now, that means paperwork that complies with the real ID, or in Alabama, Star ID. It also requires photo ID in order to vote. Now, all Alabama Republican Congress members voted in favor, and both Democrats voted against. Expect the bill to have a tougher road in the Senate. Both of Alabama's U.S. Senators, Katie Britt and Tommy Tuberville, have promoted the legislation. There are a couple of issues at hand. Most immediate, of course, is the merits of requiring photo ID and other tighter restrictions. Now, we've all heard the arguments pitting election security against ease of voting. The other is the increase of federal control over local voting. The Constitution clearly gives states the power to regulate voting, but it also clearly allows Congress to step in when it deems necessary. Now, it might seem like a bit of a role reversal for Alabama Republicans to cede control to the federal government. After all, we can reasonably expect Alabama to remain under GOP control for years, as the power in Washington has much more of a tendency to swing back and forth. But President Trump wants this bill to pass in time for the midterms, and Alabama's Republicans have shown no appetite for crossing the president with their own races to run this year. John A. Garner, the executive director of the Alabama Public Service Commission since 2010, will retire from that position on April 1st, reports AL.com's Mike Cason. The commission will hold a special meeting today and is expected to go into executive session to discuss candidates, according to PSC President Cynthia Almond. The PSC regulates public utilities, including Alabama Power and their prices. Remember that early this month, a bill was introduced in the state legislature that would change the PSC from an elected three-person body to one that is appointed by the governor. On Thursday, that bill was removed from the Alabama House of Representatives calendar. Lawmakers said it was pulled because of a lack of support in the state Senate.
Smell that? You smell that? Napalm, son! Nothing else in the world smells like that! I love the smell of napalm in the morning. Smell! You know that gasoline smell? The whole hill. Smells like victory. Someday this war's gonna end.
What you see in actor Robert Duvall at his abrupt end to his speech along the fictional Nung River in Apocalypse Now is the only sign of human inside the madman Lieutenant Colonel Bill Kilgore. With shells exploding around him and a napalm strike just carried out, from a crouch, Kilgore acknowledges the war will end. And then you read the actor's face and subtle movements to watch the sadness envelop him. Robert Duvall has said in the years since that his character wasn't a madman, while Kilgore did some terrible things, as an anti-war movie would have him do. Duvall suggests that the stuff that made him seem out of his mind crazy, like persuading his men to surf in a hot zone, were adaptations to an absurd environment that weren't as far out of the ordinary as we might think, according to people he had spent time with. He even protested that director Francis Ford Coppola removed a scene in which Kilgore saves the life of a Vietnamese boy. Duvall, who managed to humanize one of the most outlandish characters in film, died Sunday at age 95. No, he wasn't from Alabama. That's not why we're talking about him here. But from a Navy family, and spent most of his childhood in Annapolis. But his relationship with and respect for his Southern and rural characters made him my favorite honorary Southerner and may have impacted our culture more than you'd think. My semi-wild theory on that in a minute. He might not have been the biggest scene stealer or had the immense star command of an Al Pacino, John Wayne, or Tom Cruise, but he legitimized scenes in films with those guys. Pacino was wonderful in portraying a mob boss, but Duvall quietly was the consigliere. Duke was awesome playing Rooster Cogburn, but Duvall was Lucky Ned Pepper. Among Hollywood actors, physically, he looked downright stock, but to borrow a line, there's nothing stock about a stock car. Now, that's what makes his IMDb page look like a bucket list of films everybody should see. He had roles in To Kill a Mockingbird, MASH, Bullet, The Natural, the miniseries Lonesome Dove. I previously alluded to The Godfather and True Grit. He was a perfect old-school newspaper editor in The Paper, by the way, if you've never seen that one. Then there were those Southern characters. Duvall won the Academy Award for Best Lead Actor in Tender Mercies by playing a broken-down country music singer from Texas. We're going to include Texas on Southern here, by the way. I know people like to argue about that. As for broken-down country music singers from Texas, there have been a few of them in real life, and Duvall handled it so well that country singers from Texas who've had some broken down moments were sold on the performance. Waylon Jennings praised Duvall in his biography, and the two remained good friends. And Waylon didn't pass around praise like loaves and fishes to country music outsiders. Duvall became so involved in that character that he not only sang vocals, but he also wrote a couple songs that were used in the film. That's bold for an actor. Duvall wrote, directed, and starred in The Apostle as a Pentecostal preacher with serious anger and other issues. As easy as it is to make a character such as that a snake oil salesman, you can see the respect Duvall had for the character. The preacher was not a phony. He was a real man with a real calling, but a whole lot of things to work through. Now that means evangelicals could watch a movie about a less than heroic preacher without having their faith mocked just for the sake of cheap added conflict. And then there was Days of Thunder. It may not have been Citizen Kane, but it was Top Gun on a racetrack, as quotable as Caddyshack, and released at a time in 1990 when your typical audience member, even in the South, wasn't so well versed on NASCAR that they were going to pick it apart technically. Duvall's Harry Hogue, the crew chief for Tom Cruise's character in the movie, taught us that tires win races. We learned what drafting was. The very casual motorsports fans became NASCAR experts suddenly. And it was around that same time that mainstream Southerners started latching onto NASCAR as part of their cultural identity, right alongside country music and their regional college football team. Cruise was obviously huge at the time, so he's why the movie hit. But Cruise with a NASCAR backdrop was not something we were going to buy all by itself. However, Duvall's turn as a believable old Southern crew chief, with an assist from Alabama-born Michael Rooker as Rowdy Burns, gave us someone we could recognize from our world. I think we quickly move on from that movie if we don't see the kind of respect for our culture that Duvall could bring to Southern characters. Instead, just as the film 8 Seconds would do a few years later for bull riding and the phrase cowboy up, Days of Thunder did in a much bigger way for NASCAR, and it happened at a perfect time. Legends such as Richard Petty were still racing back then. Dale Earnhardt was in his prime, and Jeff Gordon, like Cole Trickle in the movie, an open-wheel driver from California, was about to come on the scene. For the next decade, the sports world would be an explosion of paint schemes and car sponsors. Ever since, rightly or wrongly, NASCAR has been a cultural force that's been used to define people regionally, socioeconomically, and even politically. Now, I don't mean to overstate anything, but I'm not 100% sure that all happens exactly the same way if Dustin Hoffman played Harry Hogue. And that's my semi-wild theory that I said I'd get around to. So even the little dominoes matter. Thank y'all so much for listening. We'll be back tomorrow. Until then, y'all come by and see us anytime you can. We're on the World Wide Web at al.com.
No, he didn't slam you, he didn't bump you, he didn't nudge you. He rubbed you. And rubbing, son, is racing.